Hello, hello. It is Marcus from the Borough of Wesleyville, and I am coming to you in September 2024 to talk about our current pavement management plan, what we've been putting together. And overall, with this, we're seeking to put together a plan for the effective investment in our critical infrastructure. So let's jump right in. First, I'll go over an overview of our transportation system as it is today, the components of it. Then we'll do a review of the 2024 construction season. We'll talk a little bit about our construction streets, or our concrete streets, excuse me. Then we'll talk about our critical pavement preservation techniques that we got to undertake to ensure that we can preserve our concrete or our pavement. And then a plan for the road ahead. What are our next steps? So to begin with the system overview, the borough owns just over 10 miles of public roadway, and we are obligated to maintain that. And that equates to 16.37 feet of roadway per person, and that is according to the 2020 census population of 3,229 people. So 16.37 foot of roadway. That's not an insignificant amount. That's a decent amount of roadway per person that we got to be thinking about, and there's a lot that goes into that. So first off, what does it typically look like for a road? What is a typical cycle? So just to think about that a little bit. For asphalt roadways, PennDOT recommends a 12 to 15 year resurface cycle. So every 12 to 15 years, getting it resurfaced, trying to budget for that. We probably can't do that, so we should aim for more like a 20-year cycle. It's just more affordable, it's more attainable, and it's probably good enough for us given the amount of traffic that we have. I think we can extend our roadways to be 20 years, and it also just makes the math a little bit easier. And it's challenging even to get to a 20-year cycle, as you can see. So in particular, if we have a 20-year cycle goal in place, the borough with a little over 10 miles of roadway needs to resurface on average about 0.5 miles of roadway every single year to expect to hit that 20-year target. So every year, 0.5 miles of roadway in order to hit a 20-mile target or a 20-year target, yet you also need to make your roads last 20 years as well. So it's kind of it's a challenge all the way around. So, but 0.5 miles of roadway every year being resurfaced is like the goal. If we can get that, then we're on track. In terms of what a general road like life cycle even looks like, I mean, PennDOT has their recommendations here. They recommend 12, 15, we'll do 20. But what does it generally look like overall? So for one, it's newly reconstructed. So you got a good solid roadway with a solid foundation, all that. And then after 5 to 7 years after that road has been laid down, that's when you can start to think about some pavement preservation techniques with different treatments that you would put down and then you would apply probably every 5 to 7 years after that, and just kind of get in that cycle. And then hopefully we can get a good 20 plus years out of a road before it is bad enough that it must be milled and resurfaced. That's really the goal here. Hopefully we can get 20 or more years out of a road before it's so bad that we say we really just need to mill this and resurface. And then after, a couple of cycles, if we get 20 years thereabouts where we have resurfacing, then 20 years, 20 years, 20 years. And then after about 50 to 60 years of that kind of cycle, the road will likely need some sort of more significant refurbishment, reconstruction. So there'll be like one kind of big project every 50 to 60 years or so. So that's the general life cycle. Other things that you need to think about more than just the road surface is also ADA compliant ramps, like, the ramp you see in this picture down here at the corner. You need to make sure that the roads in the network that you have is accessible to everybody, and these ramps are just good. I mean, it's so much better than having these difficult ones to traverse and everything. It's much better for the community having these. And we are committed to improving all aspects of our transportation system to ensure that it meets the standards of the ADA guidelines. And what's nice about these is that once you put them in, it's relatively very little maintenance on them. And you're going to get 50, 60 years like that. So it's actually a really nice investment in that way. And you see a lot of impact. It really looks a lot better and it functions so much better and it's so much more accessible. So we really need to be thinking about this. And every time a roadway is impacted, meaning when it's resurfaced or reconstructed, the borough includes these investments in the project scope or these improvements in the project scope. Next is stormwater drainage, another thing that you need to think about when you're talking about roads. Managing stormwater is essential for an effective system. And we have an aging stormwater system in place with many components that are pretty much falling apart. I mean, we have catch basins, which are like a pretty important piece of the puzzle there, that are just crumbling. They're old masonry and they're just crumbling by this point, pretty much 100 years old. And then, we need to make investments in this system to improve the system and make sure, and really it's best completed at the same time as the roads. So again, that's just another thing that you have to do along with the road. So it really increases the costs. And then road signage, something that we have a responsibility to do. We have a public roadway. Public roadways need signage. We are on the hook to post signage. Um, and that includes stop signs, speed limit signs, street name signs, one ways, parking, all kind of stuff, crosswalk signs. And currently the signage we have is old and it's no longer functional to the degree that it needs to be. And this is often forgotten about, these road signs, when we're budgeting, and the cost quickly stacks up on this when you consider the true scale of this signage that you need. You don't just need one or two stop signs, you're going to need 20. And 20 of everything, and the cost immediately skyrockets. So this is often forgotten about, but we need to put a good chunk of investment into this. And the current signage that we have is old and, as I said, no longer functional. It's dilapidated. It's non-reflective. That's really the big piece, is that you can't just have flat signage anymore. You're supposed to have it be reflective, so it's better with headlights at night. The signage we have off to the side, the old-fashioned way, is amazing, traditional, very nice aesthetic for the community. However, it does need all of those need to be repainted so it's clear, and really they shouldn't be the primary sign anymore. We should put up the reflective ones just so we're up to date with the latest standards. And reflectivity is good. Um, and they need to be a little bit larger in some degrees. These aren't too small, but the other ones just have better fonts and all that. There's been a lot of thought that's gone into it over the last 100 years. But these are amazing, and any ones that have had to be taken down, if people in the community have ideas of how to use this, we've been thinking about how to repurpose those old metal signs, like this cast iron one in the picture here. How can we reuse them as like a public arts display or something like that? Or should we put them back up at the intersections, but we put them alongside the new ones? Or I don't know. We'll have to think about that. But let us know. Um, so we must plan to improve this, and this is often overlooked. Line painting is another thing to consider, and lines delineate areas of the pavement and make it safer and more efficient to travel. And we intend to paint all the crosswalks in the business district and the parking spaces at least biannually. Now, this is something that we do mostly in-house, completely in-house, really. And it can be challenging to undertake this for our relatively small public works crew. So they really knock out quite a bit. But when you think about it, there's a lot of lines to be painted. So it's definitely a large undertaking. And then it's worth noting that as we've gone over the system here, there's a lot to think about here. It's very expensive, but it's transportation infrastructure is a challenge for everybody. It's not just us that's experiencing these challenges. And in fact, there's actually only two PennDOT approved firms in this region capable of working like resurfacing on public roads. And that's one of them we're very proud of hosting right here in the borough, having a headquarters right here, McCormick Construction. They are right in our backyard. So, I mean, and contractors come from all around to the asphalt plant that we have right here in the borough. We have an asphalt plant off of Pearl Avenue. So, when we're undertaking a transportation infrastructure improvement, program, and a lot of that program centers around needing to upgrade our roads and our asphalt pavement. It's certainly helpful when we've got an asphalt plant in our backyard or not, I mean, we're in their backyard, and it's super easy for McCormick Construction to get work done in and around this area. We're on their doorstep. So we're very lucky for that. Now to look at what we've done this year, we've had a pretty busy year in 2024. Overall, we reconstructed. So did a full road reconstruction, dug it completely out. That's the picture that you see here on the right, the really dramatic construction photo. Completely dug up the road, had to relay the foundation, and then build the roadway up a total of 12 inches of pavement. So it's very significant amount of asphalt. And that was 2 blocks of Center Street, and that cost $300,000. So that would not have been possible without the help of the county executive contributing $250,000 of gap funds. So we hugely appreciate that. It wouldn't have been possible. Next, we did a good deal of resurfacing, Eastern, Willow, Gray, and Idlewood for over 0.5 miles, a total of 0.65. So we are, exceeding our target right now of 20 years. And that did set us back a pretty penny, $209,000, 210. And then in terms of preservation, we're still moving forward. We tried for the first time in 2023 seal coating, and we did it again this year, or as a lot of people might know it, tar and chipping. And we did this year 1.05 miles so far, and that was $45,000. And then we also did significant ADA improvements to our borough here, with a total of 18 ramps completed. Well, 18 ramps actually on their own, and then there were some more that were looped into the resurfacing projects. But overall, we spent $49,500 dedicated to ADA improvements. And then also we put a parking lot in Hinkler Park. At least that was the millings that we laid down and got ruled out and everything. So that's a huge improvement for the park down there. And in total, we invested $616,000 into our transportation infrastructure. So it's been a significant year this year. Now, one thing to address is our concrete streets. We got a fair deal of them. So we own quite a few streets that either have a concrete surface or have a concrete base that has been overlaid with asphalt. And in terms of the overlay, you can often notice that by their reflective cracks that peer through the asphalt. So the concrete has cracks in it, it has joints. And those joints, you can't just cover them with asphalt. They will shine through or reflect through the asphalt over time. So you really have to deal with it. A concrete base with an overlaid asphalt is not a very effective road. So we got to do something about our concrete surfaces and our concrete base. And now it is amazing for many of them how long that they have lasted, over 50 years for the most part. But by this point they have reached the end of their life cycle. That's just the reality of it. They are cracked, they are uneven, they don't have the best foundation. So for the most part, a lot of them are heaving back and forth. They're relatively difficult to repair. And it's just, the repair options are limited. And really the premier option that we have is to rip out all the concrete, haul it away, and reconstruct the roadway from scratch, this time with asphalt. As I said, we got the asphalt plant right there, so we might as well rip this out and lay down some asphalt. But it is going to cost quite a bit. It is not easy to rip up and haul away that much concrete, and laying down that much asphalt, just the pure quantity that you have to put down, it's just expensive. And also, if we are fully reconstructing a roadway, then we really need to be completing other projects in tandem. So if we're doing the roadway, we might as well, in many cases, do the sewer line underneath. It also needs to be done, or stormwater drainage improvements, or certain curbing, curbing in the areas, or ADA ramps. I mean, all these things, when we're doing a project, you kind of have to look at this as well. Um, and Euclid Boulevard, as many of you know, it's one of our longest and most notorious concrete streets, and it needs a full sewer line under the whole road. It also needs ADA improvements along the whole stretch, and it needs stormwater drainage. So not only is it a long and wide road that has concrete, and just when you're looking at it, imagine the massive amount of concrete that needs to be moved, hauled away, and then just the massive amount of asphalt that needs to be laid down to recreate that road. And on top of that, the sewer line underneath, the ADA improvements, the curbs, the stormwater. I mean, there's so much to think about there. And the estimated project cost for Euclid is $2 million. And every single year that goes up just a little bit and a little bit and a little bit. $2 million. That is something that the borough cannot do itself. Doesn't matter how much we save. I mean, we would have to save for a decade before we would be able to reach that target, maybe a decade to 15 years, or would have to go significantly in debt. And if we did go for a decade, let's say, we couldn't do anything else. Everything else would crumble just so that we can do this one road. It's just so out of the ballpark here, these numbers. So we definitely need to figure something out here. There are grants that can do this, but it's not super easy to get grants. There, you have to put together a good plan and detail it. If someone has experience with that, certainly step forward. We could use the help. Um, but anyways, yeah, that's just an example. $2 million. That's a big one. So, and we have a fair deal of concrete streets, and each of them, this is one of the biggest and longest, so it's going to be the most expensive likely. But there's a good deal of other ones, and it all adds up. So now, in terms of pavement preservation techniques, well, for one, um, well, in general, pavement preservation, because pavement is so expensive to replace, repair, do all that, we need to make sure we preserve it as best as we can when it's in good condition. So for one thing, crack filling is an example. I realize actually now I shouldn't have put this picture here because that's not crack filling. Uh, but crack filling is those squiggly lines that you see on the roads. Those black, tar lines that go all over the place. And they're kind of ugly, but they serve an important role. And that is to apply a line of oil to a crack, which fills in the crack, and that prevents water from seeping deeper into the crack, which would then freeze and weaken the pavement, even further. So the borough has outsourced this process to a third-party vendor, and that they have the specialized equipment and the manpower to complete this work. I mean, realistically, you need to have like a specialized piece of equipment, and to buy the materials and do all that stuff. It's just cheaper if we do it on a per gallon basis for crack filling. So, but we try to do this as much as we can. It is, you get a decent return on your investment, especially for those thicker cracks. Filling this in is really important. Um, Next up is pothole filling, and this is completed in-house by our public works crew. The potholes in the road surface are swept out, and cold patch, it's called cold patch asphalt, is put in the hole, which helps to prevent more water from getting in and the pothole from growing even larger, continuing to crumble around. Pothole patching is a quick fix which buys us time until the next resurfacing. So hopefully we can fill in these potholes, keep the road surface comfortable, prevent it from growing any further, and buy us time until we're ready to do a more significant resurfacing. Now, if significant potholes are forming somewhere, sometimes you'll see a whole section that's just got significant potholes. That might be a sign of a larger problem, such as some underlying foundation that needs some more significant base repair or something like that. But overall, Yeah, it's a sign of a bigger problem, and it's not super easily fixed with just simple pothole filling. So you might see and may be annoyed by the rough ride over a certain section, but there's only so much you can do to fill potholes with cold patch. Some of it, when you have a problem in the foundation underneath, it's going to be what it's going to be in that section, unfortunately, until you can do the more extensive repair. And now, ideally, with potholes, they would be prevented before they form. So, one way that that could be done to seal the surface before a pothole is formed is seal coating. So, the way that works, or seal coating, is more commonly known as tar and chipping. You've likely heard it as that. And this process begins with spraying an oil based mix on the existing asphalt surface, which saturates the surface and seeps into the cracks, sealing it uniformly. So that's what we're seeing over here on the right. That machine is spraying that, as we would refer to it as tar or oil, onto the surface. And as that hits the surface, it saturates and seals that and separates it, the air from the surface as it was before. Um, and then immediately after that, in this machine, it may be hard to see here, but they're um, following up with a layer of aggregate rock, or as we may know as chips, which will then set into the soil, and that creates a new roadway surface, and that protects the oil layer. So that makes sure that that sealant is it's very tacky. So make sure that that sealant stays down, and the chips will then kind of settle into the surface. And then after about a month, once the surface has been driven on and settled in, the borough uses a street sweeper to collect the excess rocks. And note, we use the street sweeper, but we can't use the street sweeper, or in that circumstance, we try not to use the street sweeper to pick up these chips, because it gets very dusty. We pick it up with that, I'm saying, but we try not to use it when it's too dry, because when it's too dry, it becomes way too dusty. So we're kind of limited. Uh, about a month after is when we start thinking, okay, let's street sweep. But then we're also like, okay, we have to watch the weather and wait for the next kind of good rain when we can pick this stuff up when it's wet and hopefully isn't too dusty. Um, so, anyways, also the great thing about the seal coating really is that it uniformly protects the road surface and preserves it for longer. And that means that the good asphalt roads that we do have will last longer before crumbling, and more costly repairs can therefore be delayed. And the finite resources that we have can be focused on other priority areas. Seal coating is relatively inexpensive. It is about 8 to 10 times cheaper than a resurfacing. And a resurfacing would be like a mill and a repave. So it's about 8 to 10 times cheaper than that. And it is a multitude cheaper than a reconstruction like we saw on Center Street. So much, much cheaper. And we are also a part of a joint bid packet that includes nearly 20 other municipalities. This joint effort increases our quantities, so we're buying it in bulk, which provides us with relatively good prices. Also, it shows that we're not alone in this. There's 20 other municipalities in this region that are also tar and chipping their roads, because they also see the value in this. So we really ought to be doing it. And in the 2023 season, which was the first time we really did this, we did a total of a little over 2 miles, and we did College Heights. So from 27th Street to 32nd, and that was interesting. A lot of people, that was the very first time it had been done, so people were kind of confused and whatnot. And then again, we did it this year in 2024, and that was just over 1 miles so far. And those were a couple roads there: Union, Woodlawn, and Willow. Again, people were confused, and it was the first time we've seen that, especially in town, where you see like sidewalks and more stormwater drains and stuff like that. So it was something different we're trying. Um, and it only works in certain circumstances. So if we are like, okay, we see the value in seal coating, let's try seal coating some of our roads. Well, what are the requirements really to be able to seal coat? For one, it must be an asphalt surface. So immediately, all the concrete roads we have excluded from this entirely. It doesn't do anything. If you spray it onto the concrete, it doesn't fix the underlying problem with the concrete at all. It also must be relatively flat on the surface. So you don't really want to have too much bumpiness, or, if you have tire track divots or things like that. I mean, seal coating is really just spraying the surface and putting a little bit of chips on it. You're not fixing much, you're just preserving the surface that's there. And it must not be too new. You don't want to preserve a surface that's in very good shape already. So you're like, well, I can live with not preserving this for a couple years, and I can preserve other roads that are, higher priority right now, maybe. And you also must not do it if it's beyond saving. If it is so bad, it's so not flat, it's everywhere, is just messed up and bumpy and all that, then you're not going to fix the road by seal coating it. So, and especially if you anticipate resurfacing it within the next 5 years, then you're going to be spraying seal coat on this, and then you're going to be ripping it up. So it doesn't make much sense. So spend money better. Don't spend it on roads that are too bad. So that is sometimes counterproductive, because people will see us doing work on roads and they'll say, "Wait, why are you doing a road that was in relatively good shape when we have a road over here that's in bad shape?" And that's completely reasonable. But in this case, we're really saying, well, that road is in such bad shape. We give you that. The road is so bad that this doesn't make sense to do on it anymore. And we're just going to have to budget for this over the coming couple years, for some roadway. If it's so bad, it just needs to be resurfaced. We just have to budget for that in the next couple years. There's other roads that are in better shape that we can seal coat and preserve them for longer. So as I said, yeah, seal coating does not repair, it preserves. So that's where you're not gonna, it's not some silver bullet, it's not something you can spray on a bad road and suddenly it's a good road. So it's just to preserve. Now there are cons after 2 years of having done this, and the public's reaction to it. These are generally what we've experienced, what we've seen. It's new to the borough. It is not something that people are used to, so it definitely took people off guard. Hey, what is going on here? And it's also something that maybe is traditionally perceived or more often seen in a rural community. So a lot of people were kind of like, "Whoa, what? We live in town here, so why are we, getting this preservation treatment that you see out in the rural areas, back in the backcountry roads, and dirt roads are sometimes seal coated." And just to clarify that, there are a lot of municipalities that over time have taken dirt roads or gravel roads and seal coated them and kind of done that as a way of cheaply getting something that resembles an asphalt road. Realistically, you know, uh, that just shows the versatility of seal coating. But in our case, obviously, we're doing it differently. We're not doing mud and putting seal coat on top of it. We're taking an asphalt surface and putting seal coat on top. So it's a different angle that we're coming out at it, but we're using a similar technique. But so yeah, rural communities certainly do tar and chipping, but we certainly have our own reasons why we would be interested in doing it as well. And it's not like we couldn't. It still works here. And many people perceive it as a downgrade. They say, "Hey, this is not as good as resurfacing," and it's two different things in a sense. You resurface, and then after a certain length of time, to make sure that that resurfaced road lasts, this is a technique to do it, to preserve it. And it's really not a downgrade, because it's not like, I know one or a couple things I had heard was people with the perception that we ripped up a road. So we ripped up the road that was there, and then we laid down chips on top of it. That didn't happen. We took the asphalt that's there. Well, we didn't do anything. The asphalt that's there, we looked at it and said, "Hey, this is in good shape. We want to keep it in good shape. Let's just put a seal coat on top of it, and then we know it's better off." Um, and some people complain that it is dusty, and I mean, it is, and there are debris now. I mean, you're introducing some chips to the road, so it's something that people are gonna um, have to drive over. They're gonna hear as people are driving over it. It's gonna kick up the dust a little bit. It's gonna accumulate at corners and stuff. So it's you know not ideal in that case, but it is more of a temporary. That's in the short term. It's worst it's like the worst right as they lay it down. And over time, as it gets an opportunity to settle in and wash away, it's not nearly as bad. And then we do come back and we street sweep it. Um, and then in that short term period, when you have a lot of that chip material that has yet to settle, you're going to get a rough riding surface. So it's rougher than you would have on a nice, smooth, blacktop asphalt. So people might perceive it as a negative thing. And then there's also frustration as to why certain roads are chosen rather than other roads. And that was, as I was saying, some people would say, hey, why do you seal coat this road when this road over here is so bad and needed more investment, needed prioritized? And so there's confusion as to what this process is and the value of this process in the whole system. One additional concern I really wanted to dispel was safety. People have expressed, you're adding chips to the road, or is it becoming more dangerous for motorcyclists or people driving? Is it harder to brake? All those things. Overall, this is a PennDOT approved and recommended preservation tool. In the context of our roads, no discernible safety risks have been identified. Um, Motorcyclists and motorists alike must exercise caution, especially in the initial days and weeks after application. During this time, signs are posted notifying the travelers of tar and chips. And it is, identifiable when you're driving on the roads that it has been tar and chipped. Um, at When driving within the prescribed speed limits and carefully approaching intersections, the impact of the chips on the roadway surface is negligible to the safe and functional operation of the road. And also, what is smoother overall? A smooth road from tar and chipping or a bumpy pothole ridden road? So, overall, the adding of tar and chips does not have is negligible to impacting the safety and the functionality of the road. It is not seen as unsafe at 25 miles an hour, and with intersections where you're often coming to a stop and then turning slowly, these tar and chips should not be a cause of any accidents and whatnot. And again, as I said here, what is better? Is it better to have a smooth road that does have tar and chips on it, or a road that's very bumpy and pothole ridden, and especially for motorcyclists and whatnot, you're getting bumped around all over the place. So what do you choose? Another thing is the debris. I mean, people are concerned about that, and about a month after application, that's when we try to go out there with the street sweeper, and it has to be after a good rain. We run the street sweeper once or twice to clean up the excess chips, and then we also use the hose on the street sweeper to vacuum out the catch basins, as well as the chips. Get the catch basins and vacuum out any of the chips that work their way into the catch basins from the tar and chipping application. And then also another thing is public knowledge. Just in general, people are concerned about this for many reasons, and they don't fully understand this. And many people don't probably get the opportunity to watch this presentation, so they wouldn't necessarily understand what's going on, and they'll have questions, and they'll be misunderstood in some ways about what's going on their road. So that's where, I'd ask you if you've listened this far and you now have a better understanding of the thinking behind seal coating and the whole technique. Please share this with your friends and your neighbors in the community and help to clarify the transportation decisions that are being made. Because there's a lot of thought that goes into this, and it's Not super easy. So certainly share with your neighbors the information. And now overall, within 6 months of seal coating, the roadway becomes nearly indistinguishable from asphalt topped surface. People really, you can't tell after about 6 months that you're driving on a road that isn't just another asphalt topped surface. Um, and preserving our roads is essential to saving resources, and it allows us to focus more on repairing severely deteriorated roads, such as our concrete streets. So, what is our plan for the road ahead? Now that we've talked about what we've done this year, we've talked about our system in general, what we've done this year, and some of the techniques that we could use. What are we looking to do next in the immediate future? So, first, I think we need to do a second round of seal coating. And that this is going to come at a cost of about $25,500. But that includes a whole bunch. It includes several extensions east of Station Roads, Rose, Francis, Woodlawn. Also includes a section about a block and a half of Fremont, a block of Skelly, or 2 blocks, I guess, a block of Eastern, and then the whole parking lot of Hinkler to really make sure that gets locked in. So there's a lot of surface here that we're getting seal coated for that price. And this gives us an additional 0.72 miles of surface that has been or will be seal coated. And that brings the total for 2024 up to 1.74 miles of roadway, which means over the last 2 years, 40% of our roadway system has been seal coated. So, I mean, what that means is over the last 2 years, we've been able to undertake this procedure or this seal coating preservation technique. And having done this on 40% of our roadway system, now on 40% of our roadway system, we can rest assured for the next 5 to 7 years that we've got 40% of our roadway taken care of, and we can focus on the rest of it. So that's really big, and that's what makes this valuable. So and the reason we're thinking to do this and why we're doing it kind of late in the season here, but we're thinking let's just get it done because we can. We want to preserve these roads before they experience another winter. And we are also part of a joint bid, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation. And we're getting this year's price. So why not take advantage of this year's price when the unit price we enjoy now will likely increase in next year's bid. So we might as well get the price that we have this year. Do it right now. And these roads, if we intend to ever seal coat these borough-owned roads, now is as cheap and as effective as it ever will be again. So we really got to think about it in that way. So in conclusion, the borough aims to improve the community's transportation system. And with limited resources, we must focus on maximizing every dollar and adopting new methods to boost efficiency and functionality. So we have limited resources. We must really focus on maximizing everything and adopting new methods. Seal coating is an invaluable tool to help break the cycle and address decades of overdue infrastructure improvements. Seal coating is cost-effective and extends the life of our roads. A penny saved by resurfacing asphalt less often is a penny earned towards reconstructing the borough's concrete streets. That's how you have to look at it. A penny saved is a penny earned. Now, overall, today we went over an overview of our transportation system. We talked about the 2024 construction season. We talked a little bit about our concrete streets and the challenges we face there. And then we talked about some of the critical pavement preservation techniques we have available. And then what is our plan for the road ahead? I did want to mention one more thing. Transportation planning can be challenging, especially with a small team. And if you think you might have a knack for transportation planning, we can certainly use your help, and you would have a significant impact. People are needed who would help gather information on the current state of the system. This is your community. You walk down these streets, you're familiar with them. So we need people to step forward and help to gather the information on the current state of our system so that we can plan the improvements that are necessary. And then we need people that are good at, organizing that data and analyzing it and putting together a narrative around this, and then helping to frame the project and get the momentum going. So if you are interested in this kind of thing, we need you. Reach out, and certainly we can work together on this. So that's it. Thank you very much. I hope this presentation was insightful, and I hope you have a better understanding of the borough's transportation system. Thank you.